What's going on, friends? It is Slash687, and who needs an intro when there's an intro like the Sega Dreamcast out there? So this video is brought to you by my Sega Dreamcast, which I will be reviewing soon. I needed to capture some footage from it, like what you see here. That's a Soul Calibur on the Dreamcast, but I didn't have the proper splitters and all this crap you need to set up the capture card to capture the Dreamcast, but now I have it, so the review is coming along smoothly. But let's get into today's PC build video for now. Today what we have is a $300 PC build, and $300 is kind of a jagged line for PC builds because you don't really know if you should use a used PC and upgrade it or if you should build a completely new PC with all new parts. I decided to go with all new parts in this build rather than upgrade a used PC, and you know, when it comes down to a $300 budget, you really could go either way, but I just took a swing and said, hey, what the heck, we're gonna use all new parts in this one. So starting out with a CPU, I went with an AMD Athlon X4 860K clocked at 3.7 GHz. You all probably know about this thing already. It's a quad-core AMD CPU. It's overclockable, and out of the factory, it's clocked at 3.7 GHz, so it already is clocked at a pretty high frequency, but with some good cooling, you're able to get this thing above 4 GHz if you're lucky. So for only $74 right now, it's really the best low-tier CPU you can get. It's quad-core, and it's going to be able to run any game, unlike i3s, which only have 2 cores, and some games just flat-out don't support dual-core CPUs anymore. So I decided to go with this Athlon right here. Next up for the motherboard, I went with an MSI A68HM V2 Micro ATX Socket FM2 Plus motherboard. It's kinda underwhelming. It's, like I said, a micro ATX, so it's not full size. It doesn't support a ridiculous amount of things. It doesn't support Crossfire. It supports up to 32 gigs of RAM, so pretty good in that regard. But like I said, it's nothing crazy on this thing. It does not support USB 3.0, and overall for $40, what else do you expect? It's gonna get the job done. It supports our parts, and it's made by MSI, who are pretty reputable as far as motherboards are concerned, so it's gonna do just fine for a cheap build like this. Next for the RAM, I went the Kingston HyperX Fury Black 4GB stick of RAM. It's DDR3 clocked at 1866 MHz. It's only one stick, so you aren't going to be taking advantage of dual channel memory, and like I said, only 4 GB, so it's kind of underwhelming as far as capacity goes. Now RAM's really cheap. 8 GB would be optimal in this build, but it simply would not fit into the budget. Kingston's a very good reputable brand for RAM, so overall, for only $17, 4 GB of RAM is alright for this build, but like I said, if you had the extra money, 8 GB would be optimal for something like this, but it simply isn't going to fit in today's budget. At only a $300 budget, you kind of get constrained. For the storage, I went with the Seagate Barracuda 250GB 3.5-inch 7200 RPM internal hard drive. It's only $20, but it only has 250 GB of storage. 500 GB would be a lot better, or even 1 TB in a build like this, but once again, I had the same problem as I had with the RAM. It simply wouldn't fit in the budget, so we had to cut back and go for only 250 GB of storage. I mean, it's definitely not much storage, but you can still store the OS and store a few games. You'd have to uninstall and reinstall them whenever you want to play more than 5 games at a time, but when it comes down to it, for only $20, it really isn't all that bad, which, like I said earlier, it's kind of the reason why it's kind of a blurred line whether as to you should buy a used PC and upgrade it, or whether to buy a new PC and build it from scratch, because with only $300 you can't really get a whole lot out of a new PC, but $300, if you're willing to upgrade a used PC, you can get a whole lot more than what you're gonna see in this build that's made out of completely new parts. But it's really up to you, and you just gotta decide what you want to do with that $300 budget. Next up, for the most important part of a gaming PC, the graphics card, I went with an MSI GeForce GTX 750 Ti 2GB edition. So it really came down to buying an R7 360 or buying a GTX 750 Ti, and they both were about the same money, all around that $100 price range, but the GTX 750 Ti edges out the R7 360 in most benchmarks, and it also has more overclocking headroom, so I decided to go with this MSI GTX 750 Ti for only $100. It will give you some pretty darn good performance when paired up with our Athlon X4 860K. Expect to be playing most games at 1080p medium settings, and depending on the game, if you're playing something like The Witcher, maybe low settings, but overall for only $100 you're gonna get really good performance in 1080p with this card, and especially at 900p or 720p it's gonna dominate. Next up for the case, I went with the NZXT Source 210 ATX mid-tower case. I've used this in a lot of my budget end builds simply because I think it is the best budget case going right now. It's black, it's kind of simple, it looks nice, and you know, it's nothing flashy, but it looks professional, it looks good, and it's made out of high quality materials, which a lot of these $30 cases are not. So for only $30, you're getting a really good deal for a mid-tower case, so definitely pick this up for a budget build. Last up, the power supply. I went with an EVGA 430 watt 80 plus bronze certified ATX power supply. It's only $21 right now, and 430 watts is gonna be plenty for this build. EVGA makes pretty good power supplies. It's 80 plus certified, so it's going to be kind of efficient, and you add all those up, you got a really good deal for $21. So that's going to put the total cost of this build at $301.71. So we're going to call it $300, alright? If you want, send me a message, I'll send you the extra $1.71 if you build this PC. You know, the $1.71 is on the house, just message / I'll hook you up. Alright, man, so that's the build for today. I hope you enjoyed. If you're new, be sure to subscribe and be sure to comment if you have any questions about this PC or any questions about PCs in general. I have some very helpful young men who will help you out with all your questions. You know, the / think tank will help you through this process, and I hope you all have a great day. I'll see you later. Have a good Easter, by the way, if you're watching this on Easter. Peace.